Okay, let's actually reverse engineer what happens in my very specific workload. So this has nothing to do really with the metered billing accelerator. I was just looking for a quick and dirty way how to get the necessary data and information into my workload. And it might, in your situation, be a completely different way, like whether you run on Kubernetes or Azure App Services, Azure Container Instances, container applications, in a function on a VM. You effectively need to find a way to get the secret, the service principal credential, so to say, into the virtual machine. So we are now talking about how can my workload in my sample of the virtual machine retrieve the secret from the key vault. So inside the key vault is the service principal credential, and we want to download it and then later use that credential to send data into Event Hub, right? So how do we do this? In my particular example, I've said, okay, let's run this local script inside the virtual machine once, so to say, and let's pull the secret credential from Key Vault into the machine once, but not only the credential, but also the address of the AMQP endpoint on where we store it. Which means, how can the virtual machine know where the key vault is and what secret to use? And for this, I used virtual machine tags. So when I look into my workload description in here, you can see that on the virtual machine, I'm using tags, Azure ARM tags, so to say, and I'm slapping up a user-assigned managed identity ID and the secret name and the vault name on the machine, right? So I'm basically saying, please use this identity to talk to that key vault and fetch this secret, and this is the information which you need in order to talk to the AMQP endpoint over here. This is the idea, right? So the script, like this local script, it's querying the Azure Instance Metadata Service endpoint. So if you, let's just jump to the machine, or let's just, what was the name of the machine? Here is the endpoint of the machine. So let's just secure shell into the machine from VS Code here. SSH over here to this instance. Yes, this is where I want to be. And so when let's wrap that code. So basically inside the virtual machine, I have all the instance metadata endpoint, and I can basically grab the compute tags. So clear, and let me run that thing again. So you see inside the machine, I know like what is a secret name, what is a key vault in the managed resource group. So this is, so to say, the, let's just color this one here. I'm now talking about the orange key vault. So the name of the orange key vault is basically in here. And the user-assigned managed identity is in the customer subscription, in the managed resource group, the UAMI runtime. So this is the identity. So, and then this local script is basically cracking up the tags, extracting the information, and then just making a curl call against the key vault. Well, first making a call against the Azure Instance Metadata endpoint for the specific user-assigned managed identity to grab a token for Key Vault. And once we have the token, it is going on and saying, okay, let's now fetch the particular Key Vault from the particular secret from Key Vault using our token. or this, no, sorry, this is a secret version. So we are here listing all the versions of the secret and using the most recent secret. And then we are pulling the actual secret value, and we are storing that value then in in a local file alongside with other information. Right? So what am I doing here? Let me check. Fetch the actual secret value. Metering, settings, secrets version, blah. Additional information, metadata. We fetch the settings. And then we extract information like what is our managed resource group name, what is the AMQP endpoint. We fetch the, okay, now I get it. I store the connection string and the secret in different places, in different secrets. So here in the settings, we have the managed resource group, no, the application ID. We have the AMQP endpoint. Inside the secret, we have the client ID, the client secret, and the tenant ID of the publisher tenant. This is the service principal credential. And with all of these things, we are now able to go out and get a token from the publisher's Azure AD tenant, by which we, for example, could say, hey, let's look at an access token and let's see what event up and so on would be doing. So this is just debug information, which we have in here. All this information is then stored in a file in the etc. directory. So let's just have a look at what submit meter does. It looks in the etc. metering config JSON. So let's just let's just print out that stuff, etc. metering config. And this is now the information my workload needs in order to talk to EventHub. So these three items here, the tenant ID, the client ID, and the client secret, this is a literal value under which I can fetch a token for EventHub at the publisher side. This here is the EventHub instance. And when we will be submitting information, we need to say towards a publisher, you remember there are many applications pushing to the EventHub here. We need to say who we are. And this who we are is basically the managed by attribute. So this here is the value under which marketplace knows our managed app deployment. Okay, so submitting a value from our workload requires two things. We need to supply the information for which meter we submit the information, and we need to submit the information about, how many quantities did we consume. What's now worthwhile to note is this name here of the meter. This is not the name which we had on the official Azure Marketplace configuration, but it's a short name which we have in our plan JSON. So if we open that one again, like it's not the official name, the official dimension name, but it's one of these things here. So for example, let's say we want to submit something for the demo video dimension unlimited, for which we had infinite, units. Let's just see how that goes. So we would be saying, like, we want to submit meter for dimension C, and we have 1 unit. And this effectively calls into the EventHub publishing API under the hood using HTTP. So when I have a look at what that submitter thing is doing, and you certainly want to use the Azure EventHub SDK or so for this, is I'm retrieving the information like managed by who am I, where is event hub, what are the credentials. I'm grabbing an access token to talk to event hub. Once I have that access token, I craft a JSON message representing the usage. So this JSON schema, so to say, or the structure of these messages is described in the metered billing accelerator Git repo. So let's just go in there again, github.com Microsoft metered billing accelerator. So inside the README, you can already see a couple, some inspiration on how these messages are meant to be. So where do we have these? Subscription purchased. It's not this, it's the usage reported. So this is a message which we need to publish into Azure Events Hub. And the resource ID is effectively the managed by thing. So here, or the resource URI for a managed application. So here you see we are crafting basically the JSON message, and we are then submitting this via HTTP against the messages API into the correct partition. This is also important. So if you imagine your event hub has multiple partitions, and it is important, of utmost importance, that all messages which come from the same managed application always go to the same partition, because the business logic sequentially needs to process all of these things. This is why here in line 65, we are also specifying in the broker properties HTTP header the partition key, which contains our managed by property. So this basically makes sure that everything originating from the same workload is always sent into the very same partition. And so now we submitted one value, and we can consume 2 and another one. So by now we effectively should be having like 5 quantities, no, 4. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. So we now consume 4 of these unlimited quantities. But we could also, for example, consume dimension B or dimension A. Dimension, that is bad. Dimension A. So now this is bad because here I submitted a value for a dimension which doesn't exist in our plan. So this later will become an unprocessable message because it's a bug in our implementation. Like, your application needs to make sure that it only submits data for dimensions which really exist in the underlying plan. So as a reminder, the plan basically says these are the dimensions which can be used and nothing else. But EventHub has no way to validate this, right? So EventHub just accepts everything which you push into it. And now we have submitted stuff for all of the dimensions. So if we just on the publisher side have a look into EventHub, we should be seeing a couple of messages flying in. So resource groups, metered billing accelerator, and then in EventHub, in this specific EventHub instance, in the monitoring dashboard, we should be seeing some stuff happening over time. So here you see basically these were the messages flying in to the system over time. So up until now we had like 6 messages flying into the system. Also noteworthy in capture, given the fact that we also configured EventHub capture here, we have our storage account with the capture container. So this capture container also contains copies of all of these messages, right? So going back to the resource group, navigating into storage, And let's just give us here, do we have access control? I don't remember whether we gave ourselves permission here or not. Let's just go into the role assignments. And no, we are not a data contributor. So do a role assignment. And we give ourselves data contributor on the blob data. And we give this permission to, the group which represents all of my identities, like before. And because I do this at the storage account level, review and assign, I now do have access on all of the containers. So inside my containers, the snapshot container is empty. There is, what's going on? Permission. It's still complaining. That is time of check, time of use problem or so. Let's check here. What's going on in capture. Okay, did I do something wrong? Let's just give myself some permission again. Access control. Blob data contributor. Am I a member in this group? I would hope so. Members. All the various identities. And I totally should be. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? So in capture. Finally, okay, that was just some replication lag. So in here, for this particular event hub instance metering, we can see our messages ended up in partition 11. So I have a few kilobytes basically of captured messages from today, which all ended up in partition 11. My event hub instance in my demo deployment here is just having some, how many partitions did we have here? I do not know if I configured this for the full 32 partitions or some smaller number. 13 partitions, okay. Just something to be able to balance here. So up until now, we now could see we can submit from our workload across the organizational boundaries. So we had the full interaction basically going on. We had the ARM deployment grabbing values from Key Vault, calling the REST API, creating a service principal, getting the service principal credential, storing it in Key Vault. We had the virtual machine, fetching all the data from Key Vault and successfully interacting with the service principal across the organizational boundary. With Event Hub over here, the only thing is up until now, we do not yet have any aggregator running that does any useful work, which is coming in the next video.